evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. We have a guest joining us in just a minute. Before that, I'll just announce a couple of family party things coming up. There's a 5-branch meeting on Monday evening. You'll see on social media. You can get details for that. Wednesday next week, of course, Wednesday the 20th, is my lecture in Glasgow on Humza, the man, the myth, the Muslim. Wow, that seems very timely at the moment because the issues I'll be raising, some of the issues I'll be raising in this have certainly been at the forefront recently. Humza has been, people have been suggesting that his donation to UNRWA, to Gaza, was something related to his family being released. We'll maybe talk about that later. But that's just the sort of thing we're going to be talking about with Humza. He's got some very dubious connections. He's got a very dubious track record. I think when he's shown his character and judgment, it's been very dubious as well. He's got some very dubious connections with people with quite extreme views, and he said some things himself that are quite dubious. Right, so yes, so there's lots to talk about Humza. So do get your ticket. In fact, I will paste the link in the comments right now. Hello, Bruce. Hello, Kirsty. Right, is that appearing? Right, there's the link to get your tickets. So that is a week tomorrow in the Woodside Hall in Glasgow. So we would love to see you there. I guarantee that will be a very interesting evening, considering our First Minister. The other thing to mention from a family party point of view is our candidate training is starting on Friday this week. It's online, it's on Zoom. I think it's an hour on a Friday evening. And I think it's going to be alternate Fridays, not every week, alternate Fridays. There'll be about 5 sessions. Now, our candidate training sessions, it's partly training. It's partly to help you to make a decision whether to be a candidate or not. So one of the sessions is about all the downsides of it. So we sort of try and put you off on one of those sessions. But we also talk about all the positives of it, which obviously we feel far outweigh the downsides of it. So if you're interested in exploring the possibility of being a candidate, do get in touch with a campaign manager at scottishfamily.org, campaign manager, all one word, at scottishfamily.org, and we will put you on the list, send you the link, and it'll be great to see you there. We explain about various things in the candidate training, but the other thing that we do as well, later on, not in the first session, but later on, we do a bit of practice, like practice interviews and practice asking the sort of questions you might get asked. And we do that in quite a sort of jolly way. It's not like a sort of deadly serious, high-pressure thing. It's a lot of fun, and you will learn a lot. The other thing I'd say with candidates, quite often, the people who we think would be best are the people who are most likely to say, oh, I'm not sure I'm good enough. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that. So I would encourage you, put yourself forward, come on to training. You're not making any commitment whatsoever. Come on to the training, see what you think, and we'll take it from there. It's a great feeling voting for yourself. You'll probably be the candidate in your own constituency. That's what we normally do. So yeah, if I'll put an advert out like that in a couple of days. So the line is, if you don't want to vote for any of the others, vote for yourself. But if you want to vote for someone whose views align with your own, what better option than voting for yourself? So give yourself that opportunity, and also give all the other people in your constituency that opportunity as well to vote for what they believe in. And one of the best things about being a candidate is when you stand up for what you believe, it's great the number of people who will come up and say, I'm really glad you're doing this. I agree with you. And often these people would never have said that if it wasn't for you taking the lead. If it wasn't for you going over the top of the trench and leading the way, then they may have just held back. So you standing as a candidate will be an inspiration to other people as well. And yeah, we'll have all sorts of interesting and enjoyable experiences. I guarantee it if you do that. So do email campaign manager at scottishfamily.org, and we would love to see you at the candidate training. And also, get your tickets for next Wednesday in the Woodside Hall. Right, as ever, there's lots to talk about. We've got comments coming in already, so we'll bring some comments in as well. But our Deputy Leader, Phil Holden, is joining us this evening as well. Welcome, Phil.
Good evening, Richard.
We've got lots to talk about tonight. So let's jump into it. I've got some pictures to have a look at, Phil, first of all.
Okay.
So what do we Now, last week I talked a bit about the Lib Dems leaflet that they put through my door. They've chosen their candidate in my constituency. And I spoke about it last week, but I decided I hadn't pushed the knife in quite far enough in terms of attacking their dodgy graph they've got here. The Lib Dems are famous for publishing, I would say, dishonest, misleading, disingenuous graphs. And that this is a classic of its type. So they're talking about the Edinburgh Southwest constituency, and they produced this graph saying, look, the Lib Dems are the ones who can catch the SNP. And last week we pointed out that they put a big hat on top of the Lib Dem column just to make it look a bit taller, which is obviously pretty dodgy in itself. But the statistics they're using there are from the Scottish Council, sorry, for the council elections over the whole of Edinburgh. Okay, so they're trying to say Edinburgh Southwest, look, the Lib Dems are in second place. Let me tell you what actually happened the last time there was an election in this constituency. The SNP got 48% and the Lib Dems got 10%. The SNP got 48 and the Lib Dems got 10. In between the Lib Dems and the SNP were Labour on 14 and the Conservatives on 25. Right, what words would you use to describe the Lib Dem tactics there, Phil? Is that dishonest or is that
dishonest?
too strong?
I think it's pretty yeah, that's the right word.
It's deliberately misleading, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to vote for a party that deliberately misleads people in a cynical ploy to trick them into voting for them because they think they're in second place, then the Lib Dems are the party for you. I would love it if the fact that they use trick like this just destroyed their credibility, and it was a big controversy in the media, and it just meant people just said, I cannot vote for a party that does that. That sort of lack of integrity. But that's just one of the reasons not to vote for the Lib Dems, of course. There's the main reason as well.
Yeah.
But the Lib Dems have it's quite remarkable what they do. When they campaign locally, like their policies are secret. They do not want to talk about what they actually believe, what they actually stand for. They want to talk about like mundane local issues. We'll fix the road. We'll get the ferries working. We'll get the school repaired. That sort of thing. What they definitely do not want to talk about is their policy of supporting assisted suicide, their policy of decriminalising abortion, in other words, abortion up to full term, and their fanatical promotion of transgender ideology.
What do you think is the best way of kind of exposing them?
Well, we actually did a leaflet in the by-election saying, we've done a couple of leaflets. One said, Lib Dem is the party of death. We also done a thing that said, fight extremism, the Lib Dems.
Yeah.
Because people think, they're the cuddly middle of the road people. But I can't imagine representing a party where when I'm speaking about them, I'm trying my best to keep their actual policy secret. And I'm embarrassed by them. It's just a strange dynamic. But I've done hustings with Lib Dems, and that's what they want to do. They do not want to talk about their party's policies. They just want to talk about, getting better lines painted in the road down the high street.
So why do people stand for Lib Dems?
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question. I would say years ago it would be because they were the middle of the road. Maybe boring's a bad way, a pejorative way to put it. They're the middle of the road, a bit bland. You're certainly not going to have any extremism there. We're solid, middle of the road, good people who will get things done, especially locally. I think like decades ago, that's why people joined. Why do people join now? I don't know. I mean, do they join now?
And if you were to break down their name, Liberal Democrat, what does it actually mean? What does the Liberal mean? What does the Democrat mean?
Well, the Liberal means like hyper-liberal, progressive, secular values. That's what they take the Liberal to mean. The Democrat bit, I'm not sure that means very much. So they weren't too keen on democracy.
Party in a democracy, that's a big thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. But that's interesting, particularly in Orkney. In Orkney, they've got a Lib Dem MSP, and MP. And we've got a branch up in Orkney now. So exposing this is going to be a key part of our election campaigning in Orkney. In the meeting we had in Orkney, people were saying, people don't vote for this, for Liam MacArthur, because he wants doctors to be able to poison their patients. He said people are they're either not interested or they're opposed to it, the majority. And yet still they vote for him because he's, a local nice guy. We've got to open people's eyes.
In the past, though, wouldn't liberal have meant standing very much for free speech and things like that?
It would. Yeah. Liberal as in, people can live their lives how they want to.
Yeah,
and
without interference, and that's what liberalism sort of should mean in a fairly positive way. But
I suppose in some things they'd say, assisted suicide, that's liberalism because it's letting people do what they like. Full-term abortion, that's liberal because it's letting people do what they like. Decriminalizing drugs, that's liberal because it's letting people do as they like. I think liberalism is an inadequate philosophy. There are lots of things where the government needs to restrict the range of choices open to a person. Excellent, congratulations, Beryl. Beryl, have you been to one of our meetings there? Do you know Leroy up in Orkney? That would be nice if you had. Right, let's see what's that next in my little thing of slides here. Oh yeah, Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. Something quite amazing has happened in the Republic of Ireland, and I don't really understand how, but I'll explain what's happened, and we can then speculate how this happened. The Constitution of the Republic of Ireland was obviously written in the time when the Republic of Ireland was a strongly Catholic country, and what's in the Constitution is brilliant. Like this, for example. The state recognizes the family as the natural, primary, and fundamental unit group of society, and as a moral institution possessing inalienable and imprescriptible rights, antecedent and superior to all positive law. Wow. We'd like that in the Scottish Constitution. Positive law is law that people make up, if you like, as opposed to natural law. That's possible. So it's saying basically the state needs to keep out of family life. Family life has got primacy over the state, generally speaking. And then it goes on to say, the state pledges itself to guard with special care the institution of marriage on which the family is founded and to protect it against attack. How about that then? That's in the Constitution of the Republic of Ireland. Could you have written it better yourself, Phil?
Probably not. What weight does a constitution have in Ireland?
I think normally a constitution can be appealed to legally. If someone's doing something that's unconstitutional, then the courts can stop it happening. So it's like above the law. If you want to change the constitution, it's normally a bigger deal than changing the law. You've got to go through. You've got to have a 2/3 majority or a referendum or something. So changing the constitution is a big deal, and the government has to operate within it. Otherwise, there can be a legal challenge. So it's a bit like the way human rights charters work.
And, so that's what's happened in France then with their constitution.
Not so good. They've put the right to abortion in their constitution. So let's stick with the good news story.
Okay.
Yes, that's part of it. So just the referendum was whether or not they should keep this or go to a new version that ditches marriage, just says durable relationships. In other words, people who are married or happen to be living together or whatever, let's all mush it up together. Yes, that's the main difference there. So it's talking about
Ireland, can they only change their constitution through a referendum?
I would guess so.
Yeah, because that came up with some issues with Europe, didn't it, as well? That they had to have a referendum in Ireland. Was that right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it went to the referendum saying, basically, do you want to change this so it doesn't have marriage? It doesn't assume that marriage is the ideal. Just, durable family relationships, anything goes sort of thing is okay. And the people of the Republic of Ireland said, no way, we're keeping it the way it is. by a ratio of about 2 to 1.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic, but
I think that the woke words for things like, durable relationships and some of the things they're coming up with in hospitals and things like that to describe, because they can't bring sex into it. They're just very unwieldy terms, and so, yeah. What's your durable relationship?
Yeah, it just sounds contrived.
Yeah.
And apparently, pretty well all the political parties were saying that the constitution should change. There's a small party in the Republic of Ireland that's maybe a bit family party-ish in some ways, and they've got a representative or two in the parliament. They opposed it. But the entire media, apparently, the media establishment were saying, change it. All their sock puppet charities, third sector things, were all saying, change it. But the public said no. All right, there's another bit as well. So these sections, so it currently says, well, they did say, in particular, the state recognizes that by her life within the homes, woman gives to the state a support without which the common good cannot be achieved. The state recognizes that by her life within the home, woman gives the state a support without which the common good cannot be achieved. The state shall therefore endeavor to ensure that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labor to the neglect of their duties in the home. Right, that is just a red rag to any feminist bull, isn't it?
And that was up for grabs in the referendum as well?
Yeah.
And what was the alternative?
The alternative is below there. The state recognizes that the provision of care by members of a family to one another by reason of the bonds that exist among them gives to society a support without which the common good cannot be achieved, and shall strive to support such provision.
Yeah.
So it's like it's de-sexed it. So it's taken away so the current one, as it still stands, is that the mother has women have a special and vital role in society, and that the government must not pressurize them into going to work instead of fulfilling their vital duties in the home, particularly bringing up children. I mean, again, that is just beyond the pale to most, well, a lot of feminists now. That is just an outrageous thing. And yet the people of the Republic of Ireland, about 67% of them who voted, said, no, we'll stick with the original.
And they could vote on these independently.
Yes.
It wasn't just a single yes, no for all of them.
No,
it was like
it was two votes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just can't. I mean, I'm delighted it's happened. Absolutely delighted. But I just find it difficult to understand how it happened. But what would happen if that was put to the vote in Scotland?
I think possibly the same thing, that because it's recognizing a special place for women, saying that you have a special function, and I think probably particularly through the transgender stuff that's going through, that's basically saying, oh, we're all the same, we can all do everything, that there's probably been a shift of people saying, actually, there is a difference between men and women. I don't want to be viewed as the same as a man, and I don't want a man to be viewed as the same as me. But
I mean, a way you could look at that, you could say to women, would you like to be forced by economic necessity to engage in labor to the neglect of your duties in the home? Would you like to be forced to do that? I mean, I suppose anyone would say no. No, I don't want to be obliged. I'd like the choice, but I don't want to be obliged to. I don't want to be forced to. I mean, if this was in the UK constitution, then the British government the UK government could have been taken to court left, right, and centre. Because it goes against this routinely.
And that's what the kind of free nursery stuff does in some sense, is it obliges you to work because you paid for it. That your taxes go up to the point where you need to work to pay the taxes, and you've already paid for it, so you might as well work, because if you don't, you're out of pocket.
The other side of it is the taxing individuals instead of families, which makes it really difficult to have a single income family, because the tax system hammers them. Whereas if you've got both parents working, then you pay a lot less tax with the same family income.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm planning on looking into a bit more to see why that happened. Sure, looks like the ordinary people of Ireland to get a bit more wise. Deceptions of the politicians, half truths of the media. Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so. I think it's a staggering results. But yeah, good point. They did get it wrong last time on abortion. Yeah, so there are many who would vote to retain traditional lifestyles. Yeah, but apparently there was virtually no campaign. You see what I mean? So there's massively funded, and like the whole establishment arguing for yes, and virtually no campaign, and the no campaign won by a mile. It's a bit similar actually. Did you follow the one in Australia a little while ago, where they had a referendum on implementing something called The Voice that will give a special priority to Indigenous peoples. So it would give a special means for Indigenous peoples to have an input into the political decision-making system.
No, I didn't do that.
And again, the whole establishment was for it.
it.
Yeah, the whole establishment was for it. Massive momentum. Basically, you either are for it and you're progressive and you're a good person, or you're a racist. That's the way it was presented. And the Australian people said no. I think by a pretty chunky margin as well. They said no, we're not interested in that. We want everyone treated equally. So, yeah, that is interesting. But I've got a couple more things to look at. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, just a reminder of those who have just tuned in since the beginning. Humza Yousaf, the man, the myth, the Muslim, public lecture by my very self, Wednesday next week in Glasgow. Tickets, a mere £10 in the Woodside Hall. I'll just paste the link in again. Get your tickets right now, and I guarantee that's going to be a very, very interesting evening. Right, I've been having a look at the RSHP resources again. It's a while since I've had a look through. I thought I'd put a few things on the internet, because there's always people who are not familiar with what's there. So looking at the nursery material, again, this is one of the things I found. This is a nursery lesson plan. So we're talking 3 and 4 year olds. So imagine a bunch of little kiddies sitting on the mat. So let's imagine, think about boys in particular. Right. So what you have to do in this lesson is encourage group and one-to-one conversations about how it feels to be cared for and looked after. And also, how does it feel when you can help and look after someone or something, helping a friend, looking after a sibling, or caring for a cat? Right, Phil, I'm going to try this on you. Phil, how does it feel to be cared for?
It feels warm and fuzzy.
How does it feel when you care for a pet?
Soft and warm and purring.
Yeah.
Soothing.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Now, my point with these things is it's so, I think generally in Scottish education, if you think about things that would be more female typical and things that would be male typical, things are always heading off in the direction of more female typical. You could imagine some little girls might quite enjoy that. But I think for a lot of little boys sitting there, having to talk about what it feels like to be cared for is torture. It's cruel and inhumane treatment of little boys in nursery. I mean, just let them go and build a big tower out of the blocks, or go for a walk in the woods and find some sticks and play with swords or something. I don't know, or start counting, whatever. But this sort of therapeutic, emotional, navel gazing sort of stuff.
Is this strategy working? Are we seeing substantially less violence in schools?
No, we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing a massive increase in mental health problems and behavioral problems and emotional problems in young people. But they're not capable of changing direction. No matter how much worse things get, the solution that they're thinking is always, the reason things are so bad is because we haven't gone far enough in the direction we're going. So we need to go even further. When we go even further, that's when we'll see things.
So what do you think should be next?
How do you mean?
Well, if this isn't working, if this is kind of, You know, boys are still being violent, are becoming even more violent. How could we be more extreme in this nursery lesson plan? What do you think?
I suppose you just have to increase the proportion of the day you spend sitting in a circle.
Yeah.
And give them a piece of paper and draw a picture about what's great about you. I've seen lesson plans about that.
Okay.
I've seen that take place in schools,
yes,
where the lesson is we're going to boost your self-esteem. So you've got to draw a poster advertising yourself and your finest qualities.
Yeah.
And it's just pointless. Just, a nursery play. I mean, you deal with issues. If someone punches someone, then you deal with it. Speak to them and say, you do not do that. Look what you've done. You can't, but I bet they wouldn't do that either. If someone does punch someone, they probably sit down and say, how do you think do you think Joanna liked being punched in the face? No. Oh, well, now you know she didn't like it. You won't do it again, will you? Oh, no, I won't do it again. And everyone thinks it's a big joke, and he thinks it's a joke. And the next day he gives someone a kick instead, because, nothing happened when you punch someone. So why not try kicking someone? But it just gets more and more extreme. And more, I think what this can contribute, well, it's a chicken and egg thing. Scottish education, that the staff are becoming increasingly female. I think overall it's 77% female, including secondary schools.
And in secondary schools on their own, do you know?
I think 77. I can't remember. I think in primary
schools,
you
expect primary school to be, almost entirely female.
Yeah, it's 80 or 90, I think, in primary school.
Yeah,
I think 77
so even
might
if you
actually
had
be
half male, half female in secondary school, then you'd end up with like 75% female, assuming
actually, I think the 77 is just high schools.
Just high schools.
I think it's 77 in high schools. But I've heard this from male teachers, that they just feel they don't fit in. The way they would want to naturally be is so frowned upon. They feel that having to constantly act differently than they naturally would. So they just don't, or they don't go into it in the first place, because the whole environment is just not conducive to it. They just don't feel like they fit in. They can't operate naturally in it. And I think what children learn from this as well, this sort of hyper gentle therapeutic thing, that they don't learn what real people are like. Because real people get annoyed about things. If you behave in a really awkward and provocative way, people get fed up with you and they'll let you know about it. That's what happens in the real world. But children are being taught by experience that people will just put up with anything. People that don't actually have any emotions, they'll just put up with anything. So you're always the center of the discussion on what's going on. It's very strange. Okay. What do we got here? Who's this? Talbot Rothwell. That's a new name, I think. Mockery from a failed teacher and UKIPper, risible, and you're crying. Oh, don't cry. Don't cry. I'm not sure which way I failed as a teacher. I don't know about that. Right, totally agree. Gareth Frod, I can say girls love school mostly and boys endure it. Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of the teachers love the girls and endure the boys as well. Because as far as a lot of teachers are concerned, the girls are the ones who do what you'd really want them to do. The girls are the ones they'll sit down and talk about what it feels like stroking the cat, and they'll quite enjoy that. Whereas the naughty boys, they just can't be bothered with it and want to go and do something else, want to go and make a tower out of the blocks or something. So the boys pick up the message that really the teachers would prefer it if they were like the girls, and goes downhill from there. Okay, right. Let's see what's next. Oh, there's something else I'm looking at from the nurseries. Go again, 3 and 4 year olds we're looking at here. I just think that's completely unnecessary for 3 and 4 years. Why do you need to be teaching those words? Why do you need to be putting up a picture of a boy and girl naked standing next to each other, which obviously sort of normalizes, I think, subliminally, to the boys and girls, you just stand next to each other naked. That's perfectly normal, normal and natural. Yeah, I think this is taking away what should be inhibitions, or what the natural inhibitions that very young children have. And I don't think it serves any useful purpose. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I think this, and as you go further on in the primary school education, it's really just desensitizing children. You know, and I think inhibitions there are generally a good thing, in terms of like that if you don't want all the children to be having the vocabulary, you know, there basically for these things, and you know, particularly like in the 10 and 11 stuff where it tells children how to have sex, and then you arm all the children with that at an age when they're all having sleepovers and these kind of things. I don't think it's helpful.
Yeah. Right. But I just mentioned Mother's Day there. It's always worth a mention. In the Scottish Parliament, they have a debate and a special event for, I don't know how many special days in the year, but an awful lot. I mean, you name an illness and there's a day for it. You name any ethnic group or national group or anything. There's just no end of days. Every political, every cause going has a special day, and it's marked in the Scottish Parliament. But to the best of my knowledge, and I have looked, they don't do anything whatsoever for Mother's Day, but they go overboard, obviously, for International Women's Day. And I think, is it a coincidence that International Women's Day is so close to Mother's Day? Because I always see them not in competition with each other, but I think there's quite a stark contrast. The International Women's Day is Feminism Day, whereas Mother's Day is more traditional values day. Now, some people would say, oh, you know, they don't contradict each other. But I think the emphasis with International Women's Day is that women can do anything. They can actually do really important things, like flying airplanes and, you know, being CEOs and politicians or whatever. The emphasis is all on that. And I think it neglects, let's put it mildly, it neglects traditional female roles. There's Mother's Day, which celebrates the traditional, female role. That's just not on the agenda in the Parliament at all. No. Do you see much of International Women's Day?
I thought that I'd got away with not seeing too much of it, but we have a belated event at my work for International Women's Day. So I thought this year I'd ask if we could have something for. Oh.
So what was that?
Throat's gone dry.
Okay.
For International Men's Day, you know that there's an International Men's Day in November.
Yeah.
And I think both International Women's Day and International Men's Day fell on a weekend this year. Is that right?
I don't know.
When was International Women's Day? Was that?
Is it the 8th of March?
Yeah, I can't remember. I thought it was on a weekend, but yeah. But I thought I'll not raise it since it's on a weekend this last year. But yeah, maybe next year.
My take on International Men's Day is I don't really want it. I know I can see the point of men's rights activists saying, you know, feminism out of hand. It's not aiming at equality. It's aiming at special treatment, and it's demonizing men or whatever. So I can see the case for wanting to balance that up, but I just don't think that's the way to do it. I don't want really, you know, International Women's Day being the big thing. I don't want International Men's Day being a thing. I don't want politics being dealt with by representatives of identity group. I don't want the men's minister and the women's minister like arguing with each other over who gets more funding and whatever. You know, just deal with issues for everyone. You know, if you're dealing with health issues, some of the vast majority of them will apply to men and women. There'll be a few that only apply to men. There'll be a few that only apply to women, but that's fine. Just deal with them all under the umbrella of, you know, health.
How do you think we should deal with the days issue? Obviously, there's only 365 days in a year, and there's lots of political causes. Who should arbitrate who gets what day?
Well, I think there's already overlap.
And which month? What's that?
There's already overlap. I mean, the month's a chock-a-block as well. Children are taught this calendar at school as well. It would be an exaggeration to say it's replaced the Christian calendar, but it's swamping it, I would say. I mean, Christmas still exists I don't know, the average school. Christmas still exists. Primary school might manage a few tea towels on heads and have a little nativity plate, maybe. But these other days and months are extremely prominent. And what they do is they provide an excuse for anyone who wants to promote that particular cause. It gives them a reason to do that on a particular day. And that's grasped with both hands. Okay, right. Let's have a look what we've got next. Have we got any more pictures? This is a quick one. I like GK's Cheston. It said, an imbecile habit has risen in modern controversy of saying that some dogma was credible in the 12th century, but is not credible in the 20th. You might as well say that a certain philosophy can be believed on Mondays, but cannot be believed on Tuesdays. I like that. You do hear it a lot, can't you? That view's outdated, or society's moved on, or you're on the wrong side of history, etc. But it's all nonsense. It's contentless talk. Now, if the state of knowledge has changed between 2 points in time, then that might be relevant. But people don't use it in that way. They just use it in the sense that, like, fashions have shifted. One opinion's become more popular than the other. Therefore, people come out with statements like that, and it is completely empty. But the right side of history is the classic one, isn't it? So, chronological snobbery, I've heard someone call it.
Yeah.
And that's what it amounts to.
Assume all the dead people are more stupid than you because they can't argue back.
Yes. Yeah. Right, Talbot. The SFP are here to be scrutinized. Right. Okay. Even if they're a minuscule right-wing fringe. Right, Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. or whatever, Rothwell, if you want to explain what you mean by right-wing, we'd be very interested to hear that. Right, are there any more pictures? No, I think we're out of pictures. No, we're out of pictures. Right, let's have a look. No, what's this? A woman from Iran won Miss Germany. At least it's a woman. A woman from, what, an Iranian citizen, you mean? Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I mean, if she's an Iranian citizen, then fair enough. Yeah, at least it's a woman. Yeah, now, where did it happen that a man won the Miss someone or other competition? That happened not long ago.
I think that's pretty much everywhere now, isn't it? I've seen several stories in several countries where.
Yeah, they've all got to tick that box, haven't they? Chris, just bring you back on screen there. That's a nice car. Who's that car? Is that you just standing next to it randomly? It looks like a nice Jaguar XK to me. Right. What else have I got on my list? Hollyoaks. Now, I would have played a clip or two from Hollyoaks, the Channel 4 soap opera thing. But I won't do it because when I've used their material, they've sent their lawyers after me saying you need to get rid of it, even though they're totally wrong, because copyright law says that you're allowed to use short excerpts from film for the purposes of criticism and review. And if anyone thought I wasn't criticizing it, I don't know what planet they're on, because I was quite obviously criticizing their content in my video I made a few years ago called Channel 4 is Sex Mad. But Channel 4 got it banned. If ever you're on holiday outside the UK and you want to watch the video Channel 4 is Sex Mad, go and find it on YouTube when you're in another country and you'll be able to watch it. But anyway, so their series Hollyoaks has just had a storyline, as lots of other soap operas have, that is just absolute transgender propaganda. So if you said to a transgender activist, write a story that will hammer home your message, then they'd have written exactly the same story. A girl says she's a boy. Mum and dad's skeptical initially, then mum and dad see the light and accept it, and then therefore she's a lot happier. And the girl has an ally all the way through, which is obviously very valuable and important to her. Just absolute propaganda. And that's with Channel 4. And Channel 4, let's remember, is a government agency. Channel 4 is an agency of the UK Conservative government. conservative government. And that's what they push out. I mean, how does that happen? I mean, I would say the conservative government, I mean, they're pretty all over the place with things. You never quite know what they think. But would you have thought they'd rein that in a little bit? Or
was there an effort with Boris Johnson and Liz Truss to bring Channel 4 in a bit more? And then when Rishi Sunak got in, he appointed a new culture minister who said, no, we'll keep state funding for Channel 4.
Yeah, no, they're talking about privatising it, weren't they?
Yeah.
They're talking about letting it free.
Yeah, which is basically, that if they were left to raise money to do what they're doing, I don't think they'd be able to do it.
No, I would hope not. I mean, one of the worst things they've done is they periodically produce sex education resources for schools. I mean, you can imagine what they're like. Absolutely atrocious. I mean, maybe even worse than the Scottish government's efforts. And they're produced by a government agency. I mean, they always have a program on the go or coming soon that's designed to attack an aspect of traditional family sexual morality. I mean, they'll have one about like thruples, or you see, there was the last one about people like losing their virginity. They'll pick someone, and then I don't know how. I don't watch this stuff. I don't know how they film it. Maybe they had that one sex box where they have people in the audience. Then two people from the audience go into this box on the stage, have sex, and then come out and then talk about what it was like.
And I think there was another marriage show, wasn't there, where people, is it like Marriage at First Sight or something like that people marry somebody just by looking at them, and then they, 99.999% of them are going to file for divorce.
Yeah. I mean, trivializing and mocking marriage.
Yeah.
Yep. And then they had Naked Attraction, of course, where you just get, for example, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 men standing there stark naked. You get a woman coming along gawping and giggling at them, and then picks one of them, and they see how, I mean, it's just absolute gutter stuff, courtesy of the UK government, the Conservative government's agency. And if they had a building in Scotland, I'd be quite tempted to be going along there with some sort of protest. But they're within, I looked into it actually, they're within an office block, I think in Glasgow, and they don't have like a frontage on the street that you could go along to, but they're bad news. Seriously bad news.
Did you see the WPath files at all? And the
a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me more though. I didn't look into that very thoroughly.
So this is sort of leaked Skype conversation over Skype, some internal messenger conversations and things with the transgender clinics in the USA. But their materials are used in the NHS. And so it was really kind of stark admissions, that they don't really know what they're doing. And they don't have good evidence for what they're doing, and that, children are being pushed into transition, and even The Guardian ended up writing a scathing piece on what's happening there, so for The Guardian to say like something needs to be done here, that's quite a move.
It is, yeah, remarkable. I was aware of that. I sort of got the gist of it. I hadn't followed the details.
It's actually quite a good long piece on GB News, Free Speech Nation. Enjoyed listening to that. It was well put together.
I think the whole transgender healthcare narrative it's unraveling a bit around the world. But maybe it's divine. I feel like there's a lot of issues. We're like coming to a junction in the road, and the committed progressives are staying on course. Yeah, there's substantial. There's a divide opening up. I mean, in Scotland, the Scottish government, there's no hint of any reflection whatsoever on the issue. And if you change to Labour, that will make no difference at all. I mean, the Conservatives just never know what you're going to get and what they're going to think. But yeah, that's interesting. Right, there was a big debate in the Parliament last week about school violence. And was it Stephen Kerr or Liam Kerr? Anyway, one of the Conservative MSPs gave a cracking speech laying out the problem. I mean, if you're an opposition party, that's always the easy thing to do, isn't it? You can see what the problem is, and you can lay it out in the most lurid terms about teachers having broken bones and all absolutely appalling stories of violence against teachers and pupils, you name it. So laid the whole thing out. What did he have to offer to counter it? He said we need boundaries and consequences, and we need to basically head teachers need to be able to exclude, or as it was called, expel pupils. Now, I think expelling pupils is pretty extreme. What you really want is really strong means at earlier stages, so you don't need to actually do that.
Yeah.
But boundaries. So the Conservative wouldn't say punishment. Wouldn't say rules. That's what it means, is rules, isn't it? And then he wouldn't bring himself to say the word punishment. He would only say consequences. So I think he's been quite weak there. But that was only like one sentence in his pretty long talk. So the Conservatives didn't really have much to offer about it. But then the SNP struck back. And it was absolutely remarkable what Jenny Gilruth was saying. So where did she shift the focus? Would you want to take a guess where she shifted the focus almost immediately?
Race or poverty?
Close. There were very good guesses. What else could it be? Gender. Right. Spot on. Spot on. Yeah. So she immediately came around. This is a problem of violence against women and girls. The problem is misogyny and toxic masculinity.
Yes.
And so that's how we've got to approach that. Now, I don't know.
Exclude the boys? Is that the solution? No, you can't exclude them. How do you solve toxic masculinity?
Well, you just got to have more lessons on feminism. You've got to teach the boys how bad they are and get them sorted out. Because there's only two sorts of boys. Well, there's only two sorts of men in general, as far as the SNP is concerned, and a lot of other people as well. The two sorts of men are like Andrew Tate devotees, and then there's feminists.
Yeah,
they're the two. And the Andrew Tate, they're not very nice. So we don't want them. So the duty of schools is to be molding the young men into feminists who recognize the inherent superiority of the girls, and their life mission is to be like one of them. But I just find it was bizarre to go to it from an issue where they've just been talking about, teachers with broken bones, chaos, warfare in classrooms and in Scottish schools. And within a few sentences, it's on to toxic masculinity and misogyny and gender equality. I mean, that's really extremist. Now, I mean, that's someone or a government that has just shown itself totally incapable of doing the job. They've just got no ability to look at the problem in front of them and actually address it head on. All they can do is to try and steer it off to their own hobby horse. And I think teachers should be absolutely up and up. But the problem is so many teachers have been inducted into this way of thinking. There are probably a lot of teachers thinking, oh yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I mean, it was a boy that punched me. So I guess that must have been an incidence of gender-based violence.
Yeah, especially if 75% of the teachers are women.
Yes, yeah. And the most badly behaved kids in school will tend to be boys as well. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, male behavior is more varied. Males will be more assertive, will tend to be more aggressive. So things that involve people going overboard in that direction is going to tend to be mainly boys. But I think there's plenty of incidents now of vicious girls attacking each other as well. Really sort of nasty sort of stuff going on. But I said it's just so sad to have the education system under the control of just ideologues who are totally blind to what's really going on. And all they can do is trot out their ideology. Like they've got a hammer, so every problem's a nail. And the only hammer in their toolbox, if you like, that's anything remotely to do with the violence in schools, the only thing they could think of would have to be gender. But they couldn't say it's race because most of the teachers are not like minority ethnic. They can't say it's homophobia because most of the teachers are not LGBTQI+. So the only one they can go for is sexism. and that's all they've got. It was sad and outrageous. But then what you need there is for the Conservatives to come back and say that's total nonsense. What are you talking about? What we need is this and this. We're going to restore respect for teachers, obedience. But the Conservatives are so timid. They're always thinking, well, probably most teachers they agree with this, so we don't want to upset them. So we need to say something that's not too far off what probably a lot of teachers thinking. Whereas what we were thinking from that, we think, right, this is the way this education needs to change for the benefit of the pupils. So we've got to have a culture shift within education. Whereas the Conservatives are thinking, we want to have a go at the SNP, but we still want lots of teachers to vote for us. I suppose that's a flaw in democracy, isn't it? Once you've got such a vast number of people employed in a profession, and to a large, not entirely obviously, but to a large extent, having been inculcated into a particular worldview or approach, philosophy, that you think's wrong, democratically, the temptation is to think, let's leave that alone. There's not votes in it. But yeah, it just needed one person in that debate to stand up and just shoot the whole thing down.
Okay.
But
yeah,
there wasn't. And I'm sure if you or I were there and we'd said, look, this is the totally wrong approach, I'm sure probably you might get another person or two who would sort of come a bit, sort of meet you halfway as well, and it would really shift the debate on. But that was the debate in the Parliament. So much that needs to be fixed. There certainly is. There certainly is. Pothole. I think they're not really interested in such mundane things. When in Edinburgh, during the pandemic, the council seemed to be spending a huge amount of time, energy, and resources on putting up bollards and painting on cycle lanes and pavement extensions. I mean, you name it, just all over the place. And I think what happened during that period is that their team that does that sort of thing was tied up in those areas. Therefore, the routine business didn't get done. So road markings around Edinburgh and the condition of roads in many places, I mean, the road markings are non-existent. They're in a terrible state. And I'm sure a significant part of the reason is that the routine maintenance of road markings was effectively suspended during the pandemic because they were busy painting all sorts of nonsense all over the roads, a lot of which has now been undone. They've had to paint over it because it didn't work. So, yeah. A little tangent there. A little tangent. Humza, well, let's call him Humza Yousaf. We'll send money to Gaza to fix potholes before fixing anything in Scotland. Well, we can talk about that a little bit on Wednesday next week. Come along to Man the Myth, the Muslim Wednesday night in Glasgow next week. I will just paste the link again in case any of you haven't got your ticket yet. Right. But the hate speech bill is finally being implemented on the very appropriately on the 1st of April. So when was this passed? Is it 2 years ago? 18 months ago? So the Scottish government passed its hate crime bill that included a hate speech section, which was about stirring up hatred, saying things that would stir up hatred against, the sacred protected characteristics. So the bill was passed. Then Police Scotland said, we haven't got a clue how to enforce this. And so there's been delay after delay after delay. And Police Scotland set up a special unit to deal with it and train people. And on the 1st of April, the law, well, it's not the law goes live, it's just Police Scotland are going to begin to police this. So I'd imagine
have the guidelines been published as to how this is going to be implemented? Or is that what's coming out on the 1st of April?
I'm not sure anything's coming out. It's just that the police are going to start actively enforcing the law.
But I thought the issue was it was unenforceable.
Well, they didn't know how to enforce it.
Yeah.
So it's taken them until now to work out how they're going to enforce it. But that's a good point.
How do we work out if we're breaking the law or not?
Precisely. I would guess there are guidelines, so maybe they will be published.
Yeah.
But the thing with a law, if you're going to have an open democratic society, if you pass a law, people have got to know what it means.
Mm.
They've got to know the normal person. I was going to say like the averagely intelligent person. Well, not even that. Every person of sound mind in that society needs to be able to understand what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. Otherwise, you get the situation where people either are afraid to do things that are legal, or they do things that they didn't know were illegal, and they get punished, and that's really unfair. So this law fails that test. The other thing with unclear laws, it's like the Parliament passes a load of vague nonsense, as it's doing with buffer zones, as it's doing with doing with the conversion therapy. So it passes this vague mush, hands it over to the police, and then the police become the lawmakers. Well, part of the lawmaking process, because they have to decide what it means. Then they pass it to the court, and then the judges seal the deal. So instead of the law being made by democratic process, the Parliament just passes mush, and then it's the police, and then it's the courts who are effectively creating the law, because they'll decide who you prosecute and who you don't. So it's very undemocratic. And I think it won't be too long before we hear about cases being prosecuted. And looking into my crystal ball, one of the earliest cases I would not be surprised at all would be someone saying something about Humza Yousaf. In fact, the reason I'm doing my lecture about him on the 20th of May, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was something about Humza Yousaf, someone tweeting, Xing something about Humza Yousaf, and that'll be that. But let's see. Let's see. I'm sure there'll be a.
What's the gist of it, as far as you can work out?
So long ago,
have done to have fallen foul.
You have to say something that would be
could be interpreted as being
likely to stir up hatred. There's the threatening and abusive things.
Yeah.
So saying something directed towards someone, threatening and abusive on the basis of protected characteristic. Then there's the stirring up hatred. That's the more significant thing. And that's very, I can't remember the exact wording of it, but stirring up hatred gives the idea. So stirring up hatred against transgender people or a transgender person, the question would be like, does misgendering them count as stirring up hatred against them? Like, does saying that you believe that homosexual relationships are immoral, does that amount to stirring up hatred against homosexual people? Now, I think a lot of transgender and a lot of gay people would say absolutely it does, very definitely. 999, come on, police, come and sort this person out. So we'll have to say it works out. It's probably worth me revisiting the actual text of the law. I mean, I made lots of videos about it at the time, so I'll maybe revisit that. But I think before too long, we will see cases of this. And of course, the police action will be the tip of the iceberg. The main effect will be the chilling effect. When people start saying to them, I've reported you to the police for stirring up hatred. And most people will think, that's a bit concerning. I don't want to have that worry on my mind. I'm not going to say that again. And people will start to self-censor, which is exactly what the government wants. The government does not want certain viewpoints expressing. So I think this law will help them in their mission there.
It's kind of legally enforced niceness, isn't it? If you we like our central policy being that everyone has to be nice. If not, you're in prison.
And just remember, when this was going through the Parliament, Humza Yousaf was the Justice Secretary.
Be nice or else.
Yeah. Humza Yousaf made a video for, I think it was for World Book Week or something, saying that his favorite book was the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Yeah. And
the autobiography of Malcolm X contains a very substantial amount of content that just clearly stirs up racial hatred. I mean, Malcolm X was an appalling racist of the most bigoted and persecuting kind. Absolutely appalling. Now, later in life, he backed off from it to some degree. And Humza Yousaf's holding his book up saying that this man's my hero. So I remember in the video a few years ago now saying, when your law passes, you can be prosecuted under your own law there for possessing literature that stirs up racial hatred. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But I think there will be news pretty quickly because Police Scotland will be flooded with it, with reports of that.
Mm.
And let's see how that works out. Right, that's time has flown. One last plug. Wednesday next week, Humza Yousaf, Man, Myth and Muslim. Do get your tickets. There's a link somewhere in the comments. It would be great to see you there. Candidate training. Remember as well, if you're interested in exploring the possibility of being a candidate for the Scottish Family Party, then our online training starts on Friday evening. Email campaign manager, all one word, campaign manager @scottishfamily.org. I will send you the link. You can come and join in. I'd say it's about exploring whether or not it's for you. No commitment. Just come along and hear about what it entails, and who knows where that might lead. You might end up voting for yourself in your constituency, which is quite a novel experience. So, yeah, if you are interested, do get in touch. I say a lot of people who we think would be fantastic candidates, they think they're not up to it. And we're often saying to people, well, actually, we think you'd be really good. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm not sure I could do that, it might well be that we think actually you'd be very good in that role. So, right, thanks for watching. That was a bumper audience tonight, which is great. So see you next week. This is 9 o'clock till 10 o'clock every Tuesday evening. So hope to see you next week on Tuesday evening, and in Glasgow on Wednesday as well. Right, so good night, Phil.
Good night.
And thanks for watching, live and later. Good night.